Welcome to the Heart Rate Variability Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss the exciting science behind HRV and how you can apply it to your own health and the work that you do. Just a note, this podcast does not replace medical advice, and if you're going to apply this to your own life or others, please consult with a medical provider. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 4 of the Heart Rate Variability Podcast. My name is Jeff Summers, again joined by my distinguished colleague, Matt Bennett.
Hey, Jeff.
Hello, Matt. How are you this morning?
Good. I was thinking maybe we should start the podcast out with things podcasters usually say, give us 5 stars on iTunes, or
tell all your friends, or yeah, right.
I want to make up a sponsorship, but I might really get in trouble if I do that. So
we're sponsored by
I'll let that one
HRV,
go. But
right?
it's good to be back with you, my friend.
You too. Right before the weekend.
Yeah.
So we got a lot to talk about today. I think we did a good job. Hopefully everybody's recovered a little bit from the science overload from the last episode. Hopefully they've had a chance to digest it a little bit. And I think today, following along with the book, hopefully everybody's had a chance to read Matt's free book. If you go to optimalhrv.com, you can have access to Healing with HRV. So we're getting into the concept of states and traits.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about what HRV is. We've talked about the benefit of it, why it's so important, the science behind it, proving that it's not just you and me, two crazy guys telling everybody they need to be interested in this. So we know the science is solid. We know it's been around for a long time. We know it's a really good indicator of our overall health and our ability to cope with and recover from stress. So, let's kind of continue to take it a little bit further into the everyday life for folks and talk a little bit about states and traits. I was really interested in reading the book and talking to you about it.
Yeah.
Because I've never really distinguished the two. And it's kind of funny because they're very different. And
Yeah.
it should be very obvious and it should be very logical that a state is where you are in a moment in time versus a trait that is sort of who you are as a person. But I think often they can sort of get confused, and most people are more focused on the traits than the states. But, it's kind of like a habit that you form. You do something for a long enough period of time and it becomes a habit. If you're in a specific state for a long enough period of time, it becomes a trait.
Absolutely. Good job. Wait. I think you covered all my material.
I read the book, man. I told you. So anyway, I always like to throw because I'm coming from the perspective of probably a lot of our listeners, right? This was new to me as of a year ago, where you've done a ton of research. And so, for me, that was very enlightening. And so I guess I'll kind of let you dig into it a little bit deeper and we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, and this is an interesting back-to-back with the neurobiology, the polyvagal stuff of last time, because we're just going to get practical really quickly with this one. So let's sort of, you did a great job, Jeff, of you're a budding therapist over there. So so states and traits, and a lot of us think of personality traits, right? And that you can hold on to that. But so when we talk about states, we're talking about where we're at in that moment. I always like to think about, because I did a lot of this thinking in my previous book of trauma-sensitive early education, what we ask, let's just think about an elementary school kid throughout their day. So you think about the energy you need or the emotions or the feelings or the energies the kid has at recess. And then they come in, and then there's a different state expectations of them when they sit in a math class. And as we get older, you've got some states that you use as a parent, as a spouse, a partner, and there's a different energy that you take to work. Now, those may be a lot more similar to each other sometimes than a kid out at recess, a first grader out at recess, and then in the classroom. But throughout the day, we adapt our state to the environment we're in. Now, for those of you that have listened up to this point, this might sound a lot like homeostasis. And let's connect those dots right now. So, and we can also connect the dots from the last training is how stress impacts our state. So we talked about the fight, flight, freeze, that polyvagal activation, the polyvagal ladder that we talked about. So yeah, the states are where we are at in the moment, how well we're doing regulating stress, how we're creating homeostasis with the expectations of the environment. And so the traits, just to throw this definition, that I want to jump really quickly into what our HRV shows us about this, they're just a longer term thing. So like the habit is a really great example. There's sort of this myth out there that it takes 21 days to create a habit. It's really more like 66 days to maybe 3 months. And I say that because one, the 21 days was just kind of a really catchy thing that somebody wrote in a paper and it caught on. We were saying more 66 to kind of 80 days because we can actually measure changes in the brain to support the new behavior, to support the habit. So, it kind of stinks because 21 days is a lot easier to say, hey, I'm going to practice mindfulness for 21 days and then build a habit. It's more like the 66 to 80 time frame in there. But so let's think about someone growing up being in a high stress situation. And this is the great thing about us as human beings, but it also, and I know we're going to shift into talking about trauma in future episodes as well. So if you took you and I and all of a sudden something terrible happens, our country collapses and all of a sudden we're refugees, right? Now, the states that we use every day to succeed in our jobs, to succeed as husbands, for you as a father, all of a sudden, if we're in a high stress sort of life or death situation, we're a very different person in that. We're relying more on that sympathetic fight or flight response. And so what we see over time is that if we're having to survive in a refugee situation, we lose our safety, security. In that about, over time, we're going to develop new personality traits. So this is where states can become traits. So people that grow up in trauma, we can actually see their DNA, something called epigenetics. The DNA expresses itself different, and we build traits that allow us to survive long term. So we have these things in the HRV arena that we're trying to measure is how am I doing today versus our longer term traits of how we're measuring stress and wellness. So this will get us into the concepts of resiliency, and stress management as well. So Jeff, I just want to make sure I did a pretty good job of defining those before we really break this down.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes a ton of sense. I think it's very interesting to take HRV and apply it to this because, when you get into a biometric, so many people are just focused on, okay, what's the reading right now?
Right.
And we're so tuned into that because that's historically what all the biometrics have been focused on is what is that state? What is my state right now? Is it good? Is it bad? And what do I do about it?
Right.
The ability to apply it to a long-term baseline trends really takes it to the next level in terms of how you can apply it. And so I think easy to understand what they mean. It's another thing to apply it in the right way. So I think
absolutely. So for those of you that are on YouTube with us, I want to put my screen up here and share this with you. Jeff, do you see the reading there on yours? Okay, I'm going to try for those listening to us to verbalize this as well. But this is, and I almost hate to put this up, Jeff, because we're making some really cool revisions to the app. But this is our current version. And I just want to use this. And again, I'll try to verbalize this for those that are just listening to us and not seeing this on the screen. I'll put these in the show notes at heartrateVariabilityPodcast.com as well. So let's walk through this, and I'm putting up one of my worst readings up here. So I'll throw myself out. If you think, wow, these guys that created this app, their HRV must be off the chart every single day. Not so much. I think this was I was kind of in a recovery from COVID process here when I got this score. So.
What was the lowest it dropped when you had COVID, Matt?
I think my lowest ever was a 9. So
think about that from state to trait, right? You're infected with the pandemic virus, COVID-19.
Yes.
obviously everybody knows the effect that it's had on the world,
Yep.
but talk about its effect on you, Matt, and the way you felt and the way it showed up in your HRV readings and when it showed up in your HRV.
Yeah, well, you hear people, a few things that, and again, I want to be very clear, there weren't tests around when I was sick. So,
Suspected infection.
yes, I've had several medical doctor friends of mine said you had it, but that is obviously not confirmed by a test. But the immediate hit of the disease was horrible. People talk about the nightmares, the terrible sleeps, the sweats. Had all that for a couple days. Then the frustrating part of it is it would kind of go away, and I felt like I just had a cold for a while. So it was like when we were first launching the app, Jeff, I would like lay in bed. I knew we had a Zoom meeting with somebody. So I get up, I throw on the shirt, and I come in and I try to be Matt for an hour, and then I go crash in bed. And I did that really for about a month. And there were like, every time I started thinking, oh, I about got this kick, I would kind of crash down again. And this was one of those crashes. So when we look at this, and one of the things that's also useful a little bit, you don't want to focus on this because HRV, the best way to look at HRV is against your own scores. But population norms, and we go over this in detail in the book, can give us some insight as well. So I believe the population average for my age and gender is around 35. And there's a big standard deviation, and I won't even get into all of what that means right now. That may be a podcast later on, but there's a wide range, in other words. So if you're not at 35, it doesn't mean you're unhealthy, because there's a wide range. This is why comparing it to your individual score is good. But right now I have on the screen here my all-time scores of 40. Now this is improved a little bit. My reading today, I'm at a 41 point. I'm actually 1 point higher. So I've improved this a little bit since then. But, so this all-time reading was about 60 readings at this point. So I look at this 40 versus a 35. And what that gives me some indication of is I'm in pretty good health for my age. So I'm taking that, okay, I'm going to run with that, right? I'm feeling good about that. I'm trending upwards. Like I said, I've increased that over time by a point. So that gives me an idea, and that's about all you want to use population norms for the individual. We'll talk about group scores more, but I know if I was like 25 and my average was 35, it may be telling me I got to do some work. There might be also some things that I might want to go to the doctor and just get a checkup because it's significantly lower than that average. So my all-time average, which is what we use in the app as our baseline to measure all these other scores, I'm doing okay. Now, this also tells me, because my scores were constantly lower with COVID, is that I've been doing a lot of focus on self-care. So a lot of that carried me through this time of illness, where I think my theory is I would have experienced a much worse version of the disease as a 45-year-old if I hadn't been taking care of myself and that hyper focus I have on self-care. So my all-time average is showing I'm doing pretty good. Now I'm going to go my latest score. So the reading I took this morning, not this morning, but the morning of this reading was 23.5. So again, let me just put a reminder out there. The higher heart rate variability, the better. So this is almost half of my all-time reading. And this was one of those, I was feeling better, got a terrible night's sleep. I crashed again. I had that COVID relapse, so to speak. And I woke up just feeling horrible this day. So I wasn't surprised that I got this low reading, but what is this telling me, Jeff? It's telling me that my body is really struggling to manage stress. My trait, I wouldn't say stressed out here, but the stress of the illness was pulling me down. This is, I'm kind of working on this a little bit of analogy of like how much gas is in my tank for the day. This is showing me I don't have much to give. It's kind of like I'm right on that red line on your gas tank in your car with this. So this is a real alert to me. And you see in our app, we give trends here is like, this one is, hey dude, you're in red. You better watch it today. You better find areas to take breaks. You better implement those self-care skills. if you're going to do any activity, it's probably walking today. It's not going for a run. Try to eat healthy, do everything you know you need to do to get that back recovered. So this is the cool thing right off the bat, Jeff, is that what we can do with HRV is my trait is measured by that all-time average. And again, HRV gives you a little piece of information that I'm outperforming my population norm. So my trait is one of overall health, and I feel good about that. I'm not going to brag about it too much, but yeah, I'm getting up there in age, and I've got the HRV of a 35-year-old. I'm almost a millennial. I'm almost got that Jeff millennial HRV that I know he loves it when I call him that. But it also tells you about my state that day is not very good. So this is where this really gets pretty powerful. Now, the other thing you can look at here is my last month's score is about 46. So again, this was when COVID hit. I was doing really good. And this was, again, so you look at that 45, my last month, my last 30-day average, I'm well above population norms right there, right? That's kind of the HRV, Jeff, of like a 29-year-old, right? That we can all be a little bit jealous when we get up into that range. So what I was saying is because of my low COVID scores, my last month was doing really good. But again, you look at that 23 compared to the 45, and again, it just shows that, hey, I'm really not doing good. I have very little gas in the tank. We also say, which I think is really interesting too, is you can do your current reading or your latest versus a previous. So, you look at this, and I went to bed as a 40 the night before. That's really kind of where I was in and out in COVID, again, a little bit below my averages. But I was doing okay, but a bad night of sleep and that disease, that virus kind of hit me again. And I saw I didn't get the restorative nature that I usually do during sleep. Now we can also use this to measure before and after a work shift. So where was my state before the work shift? And I'm gonna flip to another, I'm not going to flip to that one yet. So I'll look at this. Let's just pretend that instead of COVID, I had a tough day at work. So let me just reset this. Let's pretend I took my latest reading was after work. My previous reading was before work. So if I look at this reading just as an example, my previous was 40, which means I was going to work that day, what we would call with our app in the green. If I took my latest reading after work and it was a 23, what that would tell me is my body was really struggling with handling the stress of the work day. Same thing could be said for a long run. Same thing could be said if you've got a sick kid at home. So the other thing HRV does is, okay, here's my pre-score reading, here's my after score reading. And we'll talk about tags later on as well, but this allows us to really measure this. I've been paying a lot of attention, Jeff, in the last few days of how does my morning routine improve my HRV score. So I take one when I get up in the morning, then I sort of have this healthy supplement. I eat this horribly tasting but very healthy shake that I make. Have a couple things of caffeine, take the dogs for the walk to get some of that Colorado sunshine, then do a mindfulness movement meditation for about 20 minutes. What I see is from my wake up score to because I've been tracking this for about 2 weeks now, from my post mindfulness score, I can raise my score by about 20% with my morning routine. In other words, it's kind of like stopping at the gas station on the way to work and filling up. So when I do log into work, because a lot of us are working from home right now, I actually have more fuel for the day. So again, we can start to measure the positive or negative impacts of either stressful events or recovery wellness things that we're trying to do. So one more thing, Jeff, and then I want to get questions and thoughts and clarifications that we could give here is, the other piece that we have is the last week reading here. So really to break this down, and this is, the HRV gives us enough science to say, while these are pretty generalized statements, they're also pretty accurate, especially if you're taking readings every day. So my latest reading tells me, how am I doing right now? So how's my state right now? the last week or 7-day average tells me, how am I doing this week? So, you can look at the 7-day averages. Okay, that's going to measure a lot of different states that I've had throughout the week. That gives you a good average of where we're at. Again, if you look at my reading that's up here, my last week average was 52, Jeff. Right now, I've got like the HRV of a college kid. Again, this was when I thought I was getting over COVID, and then again I crashed. So again, everything was trending in a good direction for me, and boom, this hit again. And so you've got, how are you doing today, or how are you doing right now? How's your state? How is your states over a week? What's that average? So how are you doing this week? How are you doing this month? And then that all-time average again. This all-time when I took it was, how have I been doing over the last 2 months? So it kind of gives you that information. Then that can start to hit, how is my trait for handling and managing stress? So how is again, we talked about personality traits. How is my personality trait and how's my biology adapting to the level of stress in my life over a period of time? So then we can start to get some insights into that trait piece here. So again, this one little number, because of all the science that backs it up that we've talked about in previous episodes, gives us great state and trait information. You can follow this again, trending over time as well. So again, this reading that I have up right now, my weekly average is going to push up my all-time just gradually. It's not going to be great jumps, but it's going to push that up over time. Again, how are you doing this month? How are you doing this week? How are you doing right now? So again, this one little number gives us so much to look at and think about. So I went over that pretty quick, Jeff. So what questions?
Yeah. I think this is great. I think this is the first time a lot of people are actually seeing HRV scores. And I think that's probably bringing a lot of the things we've talked about into context. But one of the things we've talked about a lot, one of the things we're passionate about, is not only bringing this data to the individual, because it's important for all of us to know this about ourselves and implement strategies to continue to increase that score as best you can, or at least maintain it. But one of the other things that we're really focused on at Optimal HRV is, how do we bring this data to organizations to provide better care, to help with productivity, for HR benefits, for the well-being of their staff? So maybe talk about the concepts and using the scores you just showed. If you're a provider, at a nonprofit, for example, how are you going to use that to provide better care for your patients? Right. Or if you are a manager, how are you going to utilize this data to ensure your folks are happy and productive? Because it's a tool that's not really being utilized in those ways right now, which is kind of surprising to us. And it's something that can be really beneficial to folks in those worlds.
Yeah, great question. And maybe we can hold off the groups part of that for the next episode, because I think that I really want to explore that in more detail. So let's put that out. But let's talk about the individual when we look at this, because I think the group gives us a lot of really cool insight. I think equally as cool insight as well. So when we look at the individual, let's say I'm a therapist. You can replace therapist with medical doctor, wellness professional, chiropractor, massage therapist, but I'm in that treatment kind of thing. So let's say, Jeff, you're my client, I'm your therapist. We're using HRV. So as a therapist, what am I looking for? So you're probably coming to me for some concrete reason. And most reasons, and again, I hyper focus on the trauma things professionally, but most reasons why folks seek a therapist is something to do with stress or energy. You think about, we talked about the sympathetic overactivation of the sympathetic fight or flight part of our autonomic nervous system, which more of the anxiety disorders, more activation of the dorsal vagal, which is more in your gut, being more of the depressive disorders. So even if you think about something like depression, you may not, well, that's not necessarily stress related, it is, when we think about stress on the nervous system, and that will show up in HRV scores as well. So let's say you come to me because of anxiety, because you've got this crazy business partner who comes up with all these 6 new ideas every day, and he's just driving you crazy. So you're coming in with anxiety. So let's say, you are a generation behind me. So let's say, your average, I don't have it up in front of me, but your population norm average is,
32.
let's just say 29. That's that, kind of, millennial group there. So I know that, and you come in and your score is a 22. That, like, your first 7-day average, you're taking this every morning, and I see a 22. So that gives me some information. Okay, you're significantly at that point below your baseline. And I'm just going to use you as an example. I know you're a fairly healthy human being. You try to be active as much as you can with 2 young kids at home. I've eaten your food before. It's usually both delicious and healthy. And so I know that you're probably physically okay. I might have you go, this is a different thinking for a therapist, maybe go get a physical to make sure that there's not other medical issues going on. If you're maybe struggling with like pre-diabetic symptoms, maybe heart issues, I might want to check just to make sure, because as we said, heart rate variability can predict 9 out of the 10 leading causes of death in the United States. So I might want to do that, which is, again, a different thinking for me as a therapist. But hey, maybe if there's a bigger medical issue, we address that, and then I can help you handle the stress management as well. But let's say you go do the physical, everything's okay on that regard. So now I'm going to do an intervention with you. Let's just say I'm going to do some cognitive behavioral therapy and help you create a self-care plan to really manage your stress with your crazy business partner. So now, as a provider of wellness service, therapeutic services, again, this can be in the medical arena as well. When you do a treatment or provide a medication, if I'm doing my job, Jeff, and you're following our treatment plan, so to speak, if I can use my vernacular, I better and you better see improvements in your HRV score over time. So as a therapist, I get that 7-day baseline. I'm seeing, okay, you need to be close to the 30 range. You're in the low 20s. My intervention is cognitive behavioral therapy and a self-care plan. How is that improving over time? So I'm not going to be wholly concerned about your daily readings. We'll talk about exceptions of why you might want to be concerned about that with different folks. But in this example, I want to see your 7-day score gradually improve over time. I want to see your monthly score, when we start to get to that level of information, creep up into that 30 range to your baseline. So one, it gives me as a professional, how effective are my services at helping my client, my patient, my consumer establish the level of health possible. So it gives me a way to track my effectiveness and your progress in care. Now, let's say I don't see any movement on that. Maybe cognitive behavioral therapy is not right for you. Maybe I want to do some maybe more mindfulness oriented therapeutic approach. So one of the things as a therapist I was always really frustrated with is I would interact a therapeutic intervention. I didn't know if it was working or not. I got really no feedback. Now, I work with a lot of kids in the criminal justice system. If they didn't get in a fight that week, that's a good data point. But it doesn't necessarily say my cognitive behavioral therapy approaches are working with that individual. So it gives me ideas that I can say, okay, I've not seen any improvements in Jeff's scores over 2 weeks. I need to adjust my approach with that as well. And at the same time, Jeff, as my client, you're getting feedback every day and focusing on your wellness as well. There's that, I think it's Parson principle. I hope I'm getting the name right of, basically what you measure improves over time. So I'm also getting you to focus on your wellness every day, tracking your own HRV as well. So I'm supportive in that. I just want to throw out there, if I saw a crash in your score, and let's say instead of anxiety, you come to me with a severe depressive episode. And I see, and you mentioned that I'm not suicidal right now, but I've had suicidal thoughts in the past. And all of a sudden I see that 21 drop into the 15 for 2 days. I'm probably going to drop you a text, give you a call. And this is something as therapists, if you didn't reach out to me the week between our meetings, I had no idea what was going on with you. So I see that 2-day drop with someone who I know has had suicidal ideation in the past and is dealing with depression. I'm going to reach out to you. I'm going to reach out and say, hey, Jeff, I've seen your scores drop. How you doing? Because I want to make sure that that isn't a sign that your depression has escalated. And that I want to maybe do a suicide assessment with you. I know one of the passions we both have for this is also if you're someone struggling with substance abuse addiction, the crash might be, and I say might be because a crash can happen for a variety of reasons, might be an indication that, and we know one of the biggest causes of relapse is stress, not sleeping well. There's all those indicators. Call you up and offer that support. Maybe I preemptively can address and give you support so those self-harm, relapse, other negative behaviors, such as an abusive or violent event, that we can stem that before it happens. So from the clinical perspective, all of a sudden, Jeff, I get to see what's going on inside your skin, right? And so I can see how my intervention is impacting your state. And if you're in my care enough, which hopefully with a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, especially with this situation around anxiety because your coworker's driving you and that sort of thing, hopefully within, maybe 6 weeks to 8 weeks, that may be all the therapy you need. You may not need to go on for a long period of time. But I can, as part of your aftercare plan, keep you on the HRV monitor. Maybe we check in over the phone, over Zoom, just once a month to check in, see how you're doing, talk about your HRV scores and how that's really reflected in your state. So if we do that, I'm hoping this all-time score, again, over time, give us enough data that now becomes your trait score, that's also increasing and pushing up to that population norm over time as well. So from the clinical standpoint, this is why I created this app, because it's like, I need to get this to clinicians. I need to get this to medical providers. This information can inform our care in ways that previously we just didn't have any way to look inside the skin to say, how's this person's nervous system reacting to stress, trauma, my intervention, my plan for this individual. So all of a sudden we get a level of outcome measures that we just never had in the history of psychology and a lot of other wellness and healing professions as well.
Powerful stuff. Thinking about the ability to predict relapse and self-harm and that kind of stuff before it happens, and how many lives can be saved as a result of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And I think the best part of it is being able to, apply this to everybody's individual daily lives as well as their work lives to make everything better, And this gets into we talked about sort of the healing professions, client-patient relationships, but it also gets into my world as well, and productivity and employee satisfaction and turnover and, all of the sort of bottom line stuff that the business, quote unquote, business world is focused on.
Absolutely.
There's a ton of overlap, but I know we'll do some future episodes on all of this, but I thought it would be a good time to at least introduce it while we were talking about the states versus traits, because like you said, in specific circumstances, a state is very important to know. And an application like this that gives the individual the information, but also their care provider at the same time becomes, like you said, a very huge shift in how they can provide care.
Absolutely. And so let's look at that, because, another thing, and for our non-mental health folks out there, we'll bring this into future podcasts, but, I really, my work is focused around how do we help people with trauma or the most intense stress, which basically overwhelms our ability to cope, to really recover. But part of that, really quickly, what I realized is our ability to help folks in the clinical world was our own focus on our self-care. A burnout, traumatized helper is not going to be able to provide the care someone struggling with trauma, addiction, all these other issues that walk into our office every day. I'm not going to be able to give you what you need because my body is not handling or recovering from stress as well. But with the exciting thing, and we intentionally did this, is this can be generalized into any industry where productivity, stress management, social engagement is important to outcomes. So let's think about this from the professional.
Turnover.
Yeah, church, big time with that. So one of the things I think a lot about is burnout. Because we know, I'll just list them off, the 7 top categories for burnout. Number 1, physicians; 2, nurses; 3, social workers; teachers; 4, principals; 5, lawyers; 6, police officers; 7. Basically, everybody I work with.
A lot of stress. Yeah, and those are some stressful.
Yep. That's everybody in the rooms, though, or the virtual rooms now that I train. And so, burnout has always been something, I've been in the helping healing profession myself. I know it's a struggle. And we can talk about the why we burn out in later episodes. But the thing that I was really like, how do we give people feedback on how work stress is impacting their states and traits? Because work stress doesn't leave your body magically when you walk out of work. Just like,
if only, right? Yeah,
stuff from your personal life doesn't leave you when you enter work. And I know both of us have home offices, so there's no way we're escaped. There's no second body, second brain that I get to do when I shift from Matt, the author, podcaster, trainer, to Matt, husband, spouse, the guy who's in charge of cooking dinner at night, right? There's not that different brain and body I can step into. So again, let's keep this at the individual, and then we can, on our next episode, take this out to the group level. So as maybe a manager or as the individual getting it, this is where I really think that latest and previous really has a lot of power. Is if I take a reading before work, and let's just say I work a typical kind of 9 to 5 shift, just to make this all easy. So I wake up in the morning and I take my HRV score. And, let's say it's good. Like I said, my all-time average is a 41 right now. So my reading today was, I'll brag about it a little bit. Yeah, it is a 48, Jeff. I was pushing up there to the 50s again. I'm pretty proud of that. So I got up, I got a 48 today. But let's say then I have a really hard day at work and I take a reading after work and I drop down to, let's say I'm at that, 30 level. So I know the workload has stressed my body, my mind out enough to see that significant drop, almost in half of my HRV. So I know as I'm going home, I'm carrying with me the stress from the day. My body is, my mind is. So the question then becomes, what do I do between now and when I go back to work to get my score back up to my baseline or above? And so that's where really, we'll get into this detail. I like to think about self-care as reactive and proactive. What do I do every day? So if I get COVID, I'm starting out in a place of health. And I think my HRV scores over my time with COVID really showed it knocked me down, but I bounced back up pretty quickly. And it may have knocked me down again, but I was able to maintain a fairly healthy HRV throughout that. Tough days at work, and Jeff and I can both attest to travel and what that does to everything, right? I think the NBA is interesting is, they're like, it's amazing when we don't have to go up to 30,000 feet after a game. You want the worst thing you can do for a mental or physical
recovery.
Go up to 30,000 feet. You want to make it even worse. I know Jeff and I are both frequent flyers, so I don't know about United, Jeff, but Southwest gives you free drink tickets. You want to do like the worst thing possible for your health to recover? Have a drink at 30,000 feet.
Right. Or a drink at the bar before you get on the plane, and then another one.
If you've ever had a drink at 30,000 feet, it hits you. Living in Denver, we know that we have those friends come up from sea level, and it doesn't help that our beer is like 8% up here anyway, but it can knock you on your butt pretty quickly. So it's like, how do we recover from that? So I go on a trip, my score is going to drop. So one, I want to keep my all-time average up here. So because I know it's going to drop after a long trip and training. but it allows me to track that going back up. Now, if I see a drop in my week, let's say it's a 20% drop of my week versus my all-time. So I'm going to do ugly math in my head here and not get the calculator out. But my average is around 40. So let's say my last week's average is, let's say around a 32, for example. I know I might be pushing in my model of burnout, the first stage is exhaustion. I might be dancing at the edge of those initial stages of burnout. So that's going to send me a message. I better do something not drastic. I don't have to take a month off work, but I might want to schedule a 3-day weekend. If I've got a weekend coming up, I just might want to make it very healthy. Do some light exercise, eat well. I'm sure we'll have a whole episode on alcohol at some point at 30,000 feet or at sea level. But I might want to do those really good things so I can have that recovery process. So as the individual, I get feedback each and every day is how is work, and it's also how is life impacting my ability to bring that kind of full tank of gas to my work environment. From the manager perspective, and again, we can look at groups in the next episode because it tells us a really great level of information about the wellness of organizations and teams. But individually, as a manager, I don't quite take the role of the therapist because those are different roles, and I don't want to confuse the two. Right. But from an HRV perspective, I know, Jeff, if your HRV is high, I'm going to get more out of you. Right?
Because, your productivities. Yeah.
Right. We talked about you want a productive employee. You want them in their prefrontal cortex and ventral vagal, right? If you didn't listen to the last episode, go nerd out with us on that or get chapter 1 of the book, right? That's going to make you, and I know you do a lot of sales stuff. So obviously sales is a mixture of intellectual and social interactions, right? You can have a great product, but if they don't like you, they may not buy it, right? You just lowered your opportunity to make that sale. So, tell me a job where a cognitive, social, emotional regulation, stress management isn't important. Now, certain jobs might have higher, like as a therapist, my social engagement and cognitive engagement are going to be absolutely key on that. And I got to also keep emotionally regulated, obviously, as well. If you're doing construction, maybe depending on your construction job, the social piece isn't as bad. But boy, if you make a mistake, there can be some costly things that happen for your safety and others as well. So as a manager, again, not a therapist, but I want to make sure that you as my staff member are coming to work each and every day. I also want to know, how is work affecting you? Because I also want to create a work environment where I'm helping you manage stress. Now that might sound like Matt's such a therapist. Real managers don't think that way. No, I want you to handle stress well because you're going to be more productive. You're not going to burn out. You're going to close that big sales, right? So I care about people. That is my default place. But I also want to give, as somebody who's managed a lot of people in the nonprofit arena, I know your HRV score is going to tell me, am I putting a healthy person across from our clients, our consumers, our patients? And you can replace that with potential clients. Right. If you're doing customer service, that sales, where we're talking to a lot of call centers who are interested in this. Because again, as a measure of productivity and social engagement, HRV is the best thing out there to measure this. So now, as a manager, I may do a wellness initiative, right?
What can you do
and so we're going to invest a little bit. I love it how in the business world these mindfulness rooms keep popping up. Not because we're becoming Buddhist, because they're improving productivity. They're improving the health and wellness of the workforce. They're getting better business results for taking this room offline for traditional business purposes and giving a place for people to go meditate for 20 minutes. So we created this mindfulness room. Maybe I'm going to allow one group just to test this out, to have access to that for 20 minutes a day. Maybe I'll do a little bit of a control group with another area of my business. Is that mindfulness room improving HRV scores? If not, why not, right? It doesn't tell you why, but it gives you the ability, I need to ask this question. is our investment paying off? If you do a lot of people like the biggest loser kind of competitions, well, that's great. Is it improving your HRV score? Because, it should. If people are losing weight, that's usually a indicator of health for most of us. So it should improve HRV scores. But, are your wellness initiatives, are your investments in that really paying off when it comes to productivity? And again, HRV is going to give you that measure because, wellness is going to predict productivity, social engagement, cognitive problem solving ability. So even if you're a coder sitting at the computer all day, this was one of the interesting things I liked as this. And you may know the term, Jeff, but I find the tech world fascinating in so many ways because they have this, like, we're going to work 72 hours straight to get this product out. Like, I love these. I forget, they're called sprints or something like that. Yeah. So we're going to do the sprint over this week and we're sleeping under our desk, right? We're doing this. And then we roll out the product and it has millions of errors in it. So yeah, you got a product out, but because you worked 20-hour days, it was a piece of crap, right? And so a much better way to do this, and probably a much better investment, is get your staffing levels at the right point. And maybe this is, I know this is a much bigger discussion. Get your staffing so you get your people's best minds at this, because I'd much rather have a healthy prefrontal cortex working for 10 hours than a burned out prefrontal cortex working for 20. You're going to get more productivity and higher quality out of that.
Yeah. And you talk about the tech world. Let's apply that to the medical profession.
Oh, right.
Bad software is one thing, but mistakes on a misdiagnosis, mistakes on a surgical table, these are wholly different consequences.
Yeah, so. A driver of a semi truck.
Absolutely.
All these pieces, play in, and there's those high risk professions right now, and those life and death airplane pilot, right? Do you want this might be a good one I'll leave us on a big question here. But do you want your pilot, if your pilot's in red and 50% of their baseline, do you want that pilot flying your plane? I don't. Now, what do we do in that scenario is an interesting question. A police officer. Do we want a police officer who's 50% of their baseline going out on parole? There's some HRV studies that police officers, this is a no-brainer, but it gets very real and very pertinent to our modern, that in those shooter drills where, I don't know, I just have seen them in the movies, like an old lady with a bag pops up, you're not supposed to shoot the old lady with the bag, then a criminal and with the gun pops up, you're supposed to shoot the criminal with the gun. Officers with low HRV scores do much worse on that test. Makes
sense.
Yeah.
How do you handle the stress?
Exactly. So again, there's a cognitive aspect to that. And, so now what do you do? Because you've got to have police go out on patrol. Somebody's got to fly my plane because I got to get home or go to the training, and I got a whole wallet full of drink tickets, right? You got to get that sucker up. I'm not going to get my free margarita until this plane gets off the ground, right? There's no first class on Southwest. So, it really opens up some very interesting questions. And even though if you're working as a therapist, well, therapists can be life and death as well, though it's less extreme every day than an airplane pilot or maybe a police officer. A good therapist is going to get better outcomes. A good person in a call center is going to provide better customer service. A bus driver is going to be safer, getting you from point A to point B. A salesperson is going to close more sales. So sure. This is the really cool thing about the platform with Optimal HRV is, we really designed this around my passion for the nonprofit arena, but the science translates so well into pretty much every environment. A family system, same sort of thing. So from the individual, and I like I said, I almost just want to get into group stuff, but I'm going to delay gratification.
That's right. We've been doing this for 50 minutes or so that's right. Yeah,
but hopefully, Jeff, this gives our listeners an idea of the real power behind this very simple number, right? We can at least ask the right questions, measure our efforts, understand the wellness, the health of those that we're trying to maybe maximize from productivity level or help heal from a medical condition or a mental health condition as well. So this is why we are both so excited about this, because the how you apply this, whether it's in athletes, whether it's in high stress situations, whether it's in families, it is really life changing in so many ways, and at best life saving for folks too.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this episode was really the first in the series where we get into specific examples of how you apply this to day-to-day, especially from a professional standpoint. So, we're going to continue to explore that more and more. Anybody who's read the book will know that. The folks that haven't, again, go to Optimal HRV. You can download a free copy. And what are we going to get into in episode 5, Matt?
Yeah, so I say let's look at this from a group perspective. That's the one thing that I couldn't get. This is why in many ways Optimal HRV exists, is that I couldn't use the existing applications, at least in any kind of affordable, realistic way, to help people know. Again, our initial thinking was, how does a therapist know the health of his caseload or her caseload and the clients that they're serving? How does the medical doctor understand the health of their patient load? Is there anybody that they need to be aware of and do some proactive reach out to? And so the group started for me as, I need something HIPAA compliant that I can give these helpers and healers that I work with daily information on the wellness and of their patient client population, as well as the effectiveness of their service. What we realized very quickly in our development process, it works just as well for a manager. Works just as well for an executive to measure the health of a team, the health of a division, the health of an organization. And that's where, to me, I can put my, kind of take my therapist hat off for a second, put my MBA hat on, and nerd out a little bit about the business applications. Again, whether you're a nonprofit or for-profit, the health and wellness productivity of your staff is going to be, if not the biggest driver of outcomes, it's definitely in the top 5. And you would have to argue me that it's not the biggest in most scenarios. So let's look next time at the group readings. What does that tell us? And we're going to bring those population norms in a little bit of a more powerful way with those folks, and keep this exploration going. We'll also throw in a little bit about tags in there as well. I kind of teased that with this one. So I think tags and groups next time. And Jeff, this has been a lot of fun looking at this. Again, as Jeff mentioned, you can get optimalhrv.com. You can download the book, sign up for our email list, check out our apps. We also have instructional videos up there as well. And heartrateVariabilityPodcast.com is where you'll find the show notes for this episode. So everybody have a good day. Jeff, happy anniversary to you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
We're celebrating that today as well. So congrats to you and your wife and your beautiful family. And we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. If you're interested in more information about HRV, please visit us at optimalhrv.com. Also, if you visit optimalhrv.com, you'll be able to sign up for our email list and download our free ebook, Healing with HRV. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next episode.